Hello everyone, my name is Barka Herman, and today I want to talk about boundaries. So as some of you know, I've been in the software industry for 30 plus years. I'm currently a cloud solution architect, and in my previous roles I've been developer and a QA person, and done DevOps, you name it. But anyway, one of the ways that we deal with boundary conditions in software is that we always test for boundary conditions, right? So whenever we write a piece of code, a function, a program, a class, or whatever, we always start with like, okay, let's say that we wrote a function to add two numbers, right? Let's call it an adder. So 1 plus 2 is 3. One of the things that we want to define before we do that is that what are the boundary conditions. So here's an example. An adder cannot take letters, right? It can't add Z to 1. So that's a simple boundary condition. Now, this may sound super obvious to us, right? But I'm here to tell you that boundary conditions cause more heartache in human beings than many other things. I don't want to say everything, because who knows, but many other things. So let me give you an example, right? Boundary conditions in human beings is you getting mad at the people closest to you. Why is that? People closest to you, there's a good likelihood that you actually like them. You may even love them and like them. And you care enough for them to do stuff, and yet you get annoyed with them. And it's my belief that, it's my observation, I should say, not even a belief, that more often than not, this is because we don't have defined boundaries with our loved one. So, and not only do we not define the boundaries, we don't know them ourselves, and we discover them when they've been broken. And then you start getting angry, and then you're like, I don't know why I'm angry and frustrated. This person. This is because, there's no contract, there's no boundary conditions. And so creating these boundaries, understanding them yourself, and then creating them will make your relationships better. So let's talk about this. So back when I started coding, right, there was no, when I was coding, there was no object-oriented, there's no encapsulation, there's no nothing. It was kind of the Wild West of computing. So we would write programs and then we just run them, and then bugs would show up, and then you kind of figured out, oh, wait a minute, this is a bug, here's a pattern, and we should look at these patterns to avoid these kinds of bugs in future, right? So then we've had over the decades that I've been in this business, software patterns and practices, all these learned wisdom that we've sort of accumulated as people in the software business. And now that's all very standard. Even compilers use them, and frameworks use them all the time. So now all this is established. But the funny thing is that in software, it only took 3 decades to get here. Well, humans have been around for a little bit longer than 3 decades, and we're still struggling with this, our boundaries. So, so what does that mean? I remember this one time, I was 26 when I had my first child, and I was 27 when I had my second, and 28 when I had my second. And I was working full time. I had 2 young children, and I was working more than 40 hours. And my husband was working 2 jobs as well. So it was a busy time in my life. Thank God I was very young, so I could do all of it and not break a sweat. But not to say that I wouldn't get exhausted and angry sometimes and frustrated. So I remember this one time coming home, and the sink was a mess, and the kids were, crying. There was something going on, and I was exhausted, and I knew that there was tons of housework, tons of work, and the kids demanded my attention. I couldn't help them in the way that I wanted to. All moms, all parents go through this, right? If they're suffering, you suffer more, because like, I really want to fix this, but I can't. And I was, and my husband wasn't home because he was, he used to run a karate studio, so he was teaching karate that night. And I was getting really angry at him. And I remember having this thing. I had a list of the reasons why I married him, right? I have a mental list. And I sat there and I said to myself, you know what? Why did I marry this guy? And nowhere in my list were all the things that I was angry at him for. That he's not here right now, and he's not helping me with the kids. He's not helping with the chores or whatnot. And once I went over that mental list, that, wait a minute, I didn't marry him so that he could be with me all day long and help me. These weren't the criteria why I married him. I married him for a whole different set of reasons, and this is just temporary. And once I got clear on that, then I was able to just let go the anger, deal with whatever was in front of me, and move on with life. And it was easy. It was easy because we had very clear boundary conditions. We understood that on the days that he taught karate, he was going to be late, and it was a negotiated, like, we talked about it. When the kids came along, he talked to me about it, saying, look, do you want me to continue doing this, or do you want me to stop? And I encouraged him to do it, because at the end of the day, the person that I married was the person who taught karate. Changing him wouldn't, he wouldn't be the same person that I fell in love with. So because I had my boundaries intact, because we'd had a conversation about it, it was easy for me to be frustrated and get off it real quickly. Like, remind myself, hey, wait a minute, this is the deal. We agreed to this. And so what I'm trying to say is that when you find yourself frustrated with your loved ones, figure out why it is. More likely than not, there's a boundary condition not being met, and you get to negotiate. You get to figure out what it is that's being violated. And then, if you need to go back to the table and say, hey, I know I said that it's okay for you to do, teach karate 6 days a week, but I really would prefer if it was 2, or whatever that looks like for you. And that's all I got for today.